Welcome to this webinar. My name is Brian Colburn. For those of you who do not know me, I am the owner operator of Sitch Radio. I have a production team behind me, and we help tell story. We mainly work with entrepreneurs to global brands in our portfolio. And we do this via podcasting. And today's webinar is going to be about that, leveraging relationships, the influence you're going to gain running a podcast. So let's get this started by getting that view up. If you are here and you are creating a podcast or maybe have a YouTube channel, go ahead and throw that link to it in the comments. I would love to take a look at the work you're doing and see what's being created out there. So I welcome you to do that. You'll see the comment section in the right side of your screen, and we will go ahead and get this kicked off. So let me get my control panel up. The business of podcasting. A lot of people talk about monetizing podcasts, and one thing that's often overlooked is leveraging your influence, leveraging the relationships one builds when they are podcasting. And it's two-sided. We grow a community of followers, listeners to the show, but we also establish relationships with those we bring onto the show as guests. And we establish relationships with those we talk about supporting the show, whether it's through ad or sponsor. So it's multifaceted. And it's important to remember that podcasts are increasingly becoming more and more popular. There are over 500 hours of YouTube video uploaded every minute of every day. There's less than 200,000 active podcasts. I just had the opportunity to judge the 50 over 50 podcast competition, and I was given 6 shows to review, and one of them was consistent, which is kind of heartbreaking to me. If you're going to become a podcaster or have some sort of audio video show, I encourage you to make consistency top of mind. You must be consistent. So if you're going to do a weekly show, do a weekly show. And I've got tons of strategies of how to maintain that. But that's not part of today's talk. So podcasting is more than just recording episodes. When it's done right, it's about building a network of meaningful relationships, which we talked about, those 3 funnels of relationship. Podcasts will build your brand recognition, position you as a thought leader, and connect you with your audience. And that connection is unrivaled. I have personally witnessed with podcast hosts that we are producers for, of audience members coming up to them and introducing themselves. And it's strange because they feel as if they know that host, and the host has no clue who they are. It's a download on an analytical report. But that audience gets to hear you week after week, and they learn about you week after week. And they just feel that they have a relationship with you, that it's such a powerful medium for that. A thought leader or influencer is someone who, based on their expertise and perspective in an industry, offers unique guidance, inspires innovation, and influences others. And a lot of people don't think of a podcast host as an influencer. And I do. I have seen it. I've witnessed it. I've helped people become that influencer with their show. And in addition to that, creating micro content to promote each and every episode, you gain a following online as well, which can be paramount. And in some cases, it's a different audience than who listens to your show. Podcasting relationships shouldn't end when the recording stops. They should follow a cycle. Discover, finding the right people to connect with, engage, bringing them into the conversation through interviews or collaborations. Nurture, staying in touch, providing value, and deepening the relationships. Grow, expanding your network through referrals and introductions. and leverage turning those connections into partnerships, business deals, and career opportunities. And I've got a great use case I'm going to share with you. If you are part of my Business Creative Exchange community on the Skylar Network, you may have seen the video I put up yesterday, which we are going to play in one of the upcoming slides. To maximize networking through podcasting, you must be intentional, methodical, have a plan, use a CRM, an Excel spreadsheet at the very least. And we're going to talk about guest selection. Interview guests who align with your goals in industry. So, for example, if I'm doing a podcast on comedy, I probably wouldn't want to bring in a religious leader as a guest unless they're really fun. Authentic engagement. Authenticity is so important no matter what content you produce or how you engage with those interacting with it. So you must be authentic. Following up. So many people will bring a guest onto a show, do the interview, and the relationship kind of ends there. And that's missed opportunity. And we're going to talk more about that coming up. And community building, create a space, whether it's a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, a community on Skylar, or any online community platform. But have a home for your audience and followers to go to and interact with you. Long-term thinking. Think of these relationships as long-term. And it's not hard to set reminders to interact with a guest you had on your show a week ago, a month ago, 6 months ago. But it takes intention and it takes a little bit of thought. But maintaining these relationships will grow. And again, we're going to talk about that a little more in an upcoming slide. I do want to talk briefly about being a guest on other people's podcasts, especially if you're a podcaster. When you're a guest on somebody else's show, that host is introducing you to their audience, which can in turn grow your audience and open up so many new doors for relationships and audience growth. So it's important to keep that in your quiver, if you will, as a tactic for show growth. Being a guest on other podcasts will definitely help you grow. I want to introduce you to Mr. Todd Devo. Todd and I go way back. He was around when I produced my first podcast in 2008. And in 2014, he came to me and said, hey, they're moving my class from on campus to online. I need your help recording guest lectures. And we discussed what that would look like. And we decided to launch EM Weekly. And that show grew to popularity. Other people started reaching out to me to help them with their shows, produce their podcasts. And that led to the creation of Sitch Radio. Excuse me. But Todd positioned himself as a thought leader in the world of emergency management with the show EM Weekly. We were extremely intentional about the show. However, we didn't realize it was going to grow into what it became. But strong relationships were key, and we're going to discuss some of those. And it's hopefully going to open your eyes up to the power of having a podcast. Provide value before asking anything from a company, a sponsor, an audience member, and foster these long-term relationships is so important. Todd, through his podcast, was able to establish relationships with Brock Long, Craig Fugate, Garrett Graff, Dennis Criswell, who are all FEMA administrators. And then Eric McNulty is an author. And those relationships last to today, which is awesome. Eric is actually a contributing author to a project he's working on now. But enough about me talking about Todd. I want to fire up this video for you, and I'm going to mute my mic and take a second to myself. All right, everybody, I just gave you a quick rundown of how this show has helped position Todd professionally, and I want you to hear it from him. Todd, welcome to this webinar.
Hey, brother, it's nice to be here. It's always a pleasure talking to you about things that we built together.
Did you have an inclination when we started EM Weekly of how much influence that show, positioning yourself as a thought leader in EM, was going to do for you?
No, not at all. And I think the genesis of Ian Weekly, what it was, what it turned into, and then what we were able to turn that leverage into something that's even better, bigger, and greater than I could ever have imagined.
One thing I briefly discussed prior to people getting to this video was the fact that you positioned yourself as a thought leader and garnered the recognition of FEMA, a federal agency. And it started off as, hey, I would like you to come on my show to talk about FEMA. And it progressed into FEMA calling you saying, director's got a new policy, a new program, a new initiative. Can we get time on your show?
Yeah.
Talk to me, man. I mean, that's got to be gratifying that they find the value in your show because you have the ear of the emergency manager.
That's a wild thing to think about, right? Like it goes from here you are, this obscure, like I really did not think I was going to have more than my students on listening to the podcast, to having 10,000 subscribers and having, you know, people commenting on things that you're working on, actually sending you stuff saying, hey, I would like to see your opinion on this. Sometimes it's public and sometimes it's, hey, just keep this on the download. It's something that we're working on. I'd love your opinion on it. It's really humbling and exciting at the same time.
When this journey started, we started realizing this is bigger than the initial intent of starting it. And we started planning, how can we leverage this? And the show really progressed into what it was when we exited the show. And we did exit the show, sold it in the back catalog. And Todd went on to create something even bigger, which was EMN Media. Talk to me a little bit about that before we close out.
So when I decided I was looking to either expand on what we're doing with Ian Weekly, which was really the brand, I felt I needed to move away from that. I think I was attached to the brand too much, where everything was, oh, you're EM Weekly, you're EM. And I don't think that there would have been is EM Weekly being a part of what we were doing? What does that make sense? And so I decided to move away from the brand. And then I, entered into an agreement with somebody who purchased it. Could I have done it differently? Probably, but I think it was the right move to make at the time, for sure. And so we moved away from that, and then we brought in Leaders Cafe, we brought in Endem, we brought in a couple other products that we are doing that's associated with the EMN media, and then really started doing some of the writing, more policy, leaning towards more policy stuff. And now we have 6 writers. We have a couple of different podcasts that are being spun out through that. We're doing more policy conversations through EMN Media than we could have done with just sticking with the one podcast.
You've grown into EMN Media, contributing authors, audio shows, video shows, and I reflect back on our journey because we produced EM Weekly for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
I look back on our journey and I'm glad I had just a little part in helping produce that show.
I appreciate that. So I could have done it without you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. I know you probably have a million things to do right now, but thanks for jumping in and we will talk soon, I'm sure.
Talk to you later. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for everything you do.
All right, everybody. I just gave you. All right. I really wanted to share that story with you, and I'm just going to pop over to a different screen really quick and do a check. Awesome. No comments. If you have questions, please use the comments, drop them in there, and I will refer to that frequently and get those answered for you. I kind of want to build upon what you just heard. That show was monetized by episode 3. We had 36 total downloads. But what we sold was the vision of what we wanted to build it into. And what we built it into far surpassed that initial vision. But it established relationships with a company called Titan HST, whom at one point in time employed Todd full time. The city of Seal Beach, Saddleback College, Coastline Community College. Todd went on to become the International Association of Emergency Management Region 9 president. He became the VP for the Foundation for Research and Advancement of Emergency Management. And I'm halfway through. This was because of the influence he gained and garnered with a podcast. He became a founding faculty member of the University of Applied Research and Development. He's worked with UCI, UC Merced. He is now the International Association of Emergency Management second VP for the entire United States, which is in track to be the president of the city of El Segundo, where he was awarded for his work in emergency management, the city of Inglewood, where he is currently working with multiple agencies, multiple cities and counties planning for the upcoming Olympics here in Los Angeles, California, if you will. And now he's the founder and editor of the Chief of Emergency Management Network. And a lot of these relationships with the universities and businesses, he still maintains to this day. And I want to give you another example that's actually not here in my notes. We established a relationship with a software company, a SaaS company that builds software for emergency managers. They were supporters of the EM Weekly brand. When that brand was sold, they left supporting EM Weekly and are now still supporting him with EMN Media and an advertiser and sponsor of a lot of the programs he puts on over there. So having that kind of influence where they'll leave an established audience base, come with you while you're building and creating something new, that speaks volumes. Usually advertisers and sponsors want the biggest audience. And in this case, they were willing to take a step back with reach because they believed in what Todd was doing and what the intent was behind his new project. So that speaks volumes to the loyalty of these relationships that we can establish with a podcast. And then the exit. At its peak, that last annual gross revenue for EM Weekly was $64,000. And we sold it and the back catalog, the brand, the logo, everything to a consulting company who's still running the show, I believe. However, it's changed dramatically. I have no idea how it's impacted their audience, but I do know a lot of the audience members have followed Todd onto EMN Media and are actively engaging with him over there. Treat it like a business. If you are planning a podcast, these are things I want you to consider. A CRM, that client relationship management tool to help manage relationships with audience members, guests, sponsors, etc. Have a system in place that's not going to let you forget to reach out to them and foster that relationship. Social media, stay engaged on LinkedIn, Twitter, or any platform where your audience is. Not all podcasts are a great fit for LinkedIn. So you might have an audience on TikTok. Engage with them. They want to feel as if they're part of the community and you are responsible for building that community. And collaboration apps, Calendly, Zoom, this platform, StreamYard that we're on. There's so many different platforms out there, but find one that's going to best suit you and the type of content you're creating and producing, and invest in these tools to help you scale your influence and reach over time. Podcasting isn't a one and done, continuing relationships beyond the recording. Invite your past guests to events. Invite your past guests to come on and update your audience on what they're doing. Introduce guests to relevant connections. It's a networking partner. And you can utilize your influence to help them out as a thank you for being on your show. Engage with their content on social media. Even LinkedIn lets you follow somebody and click the bell to get notified when they post something. Engage with them. It seems like a lot of work, but it doesn't really take a lot of time. But maintaining these relationships and utilizing some professional networking tips, tricks, and techniques is going to benefit you in the long run. Offer ways to collaborate on new projects. For example, Eric McNulty was a guest at first, and then he was a speaker on a webinar, and now he's a contributing author on EMN Media. And with him, he's bringing his audience for his books, which is phenomenal. And remember special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, milestones. Every CRM has some fields to where you can add dates for pertinent information to get reminders to say, hey, congrats on 12 years of marriage, or happy birthday, old man or woman. But be human. It's not just a guest that was on your show 4 episodes ago. It's a person, and treat it as a relationship is the bottom line. And there we go. Click the button. Common networking mistakes in podcasting. Treating guests as just content instead of potential partners. I was just talking about that. Not following up after an interview. So many podcasters don't go, hey, John, thanks for being a guest. Your episode is live. Here's a link to it. Here's a couple of graphics I made to promote it on social media. Here's some of the copy I use or suggested copy. It would be awesome for you to share your experience on our show with your audience. And if you make it easy for them to do so, odds are they will. And that's only going to help grow your audience as well as highlight them being a guest on your show. Talking too much and not listening. To be a good host is to listen, to ask questions that you feel your audience would like, or maybe they don't even know they want an answer to, and then sit back and let the guest talk. It's your job to make them the star of that episode. Only reaching out when you need something. We talked about that. Failing to track and nurture relationships over time. We've talked about that. Networking isn't about quick wins. It's about sustained value. Treat it as if it were a business, and treat the people as you would want to be treated is the bottom line. Identify 5 potential podcast guests who align with your goals. For 4.5 years, the White House received an email from EM Weekly inviting the President of the United States to be a guest on the show. Never did he become a guest on the show. However, he was on our top 5 list and received an invitation. A lot of people don't think big enough when they're putting together a list of potential guests. And I say think big. FEMA did not accept our first, 4th, or 14th invitation to be a guest, but they finally did. And those relationships have been gold for Todd Devo and what he's doing. Follow up with at least one person after every episode. Share a past guest's work on social media to strengthen the relationship. Relationships grow when you take action, so start today. The country club of social media, that is LinkedIn. If your show is on a professional business or service, LinkedIn is a place for you. I encourage you to have a complete profile. Learn what your LinkedIn SSI is and use that as a metric to see how you're doing utilizing LinkedIn. SSI is your social selling index. It is a score that they assign to you based on how you're using their tool to become better at selling socially. Even if your show isn't a great fit for LinkedIn, your profile as being a professional podcast host is a place to market that. And people in the industry are there. People who listen to podcasts are there, and they might discover your show because one of your jobs listed is podcast host. So treat it accordingly. Questions. Let's get back to that screen. Do I have any questions at this point in time? While I'm hopefully awaiting people typing, I really want to encourage you to plan to produce a show if you're thinking about starting a podcast. If you've already started a podcast and it's not going well, or you're not achieving goals, or you're unclear on what goals you should even have, I am available. I am the content creators coach. I have podcast revival products. I have one-on-one coaching products. I want to help you achieve the goals you've set out for your show. It can be done. We've done it time and time again with multiple hosts, thousands of episodes under our belt. And whether it's just coaching with me or production help with the team, we are here to help you tell your story. It appears that I do not have any questions, which means nobody is watching, or I was so thorough in answering all your questions, which is awesome. So if you've got nothing for me, that's going to wrap. We will go ahead and close this out. And I want to thank you for your time and energy for being here. I truly appreciate it. We're going to throw up the thank you slide, maybe not. You know what? There it is. Found it. Thank you all for being here. Hope you enjoyed. If you have questions, please reach out. Find me on the Skylar community, Brian Colburn, the Business Creative Exchange. Be more than happy to answer any of your questions.